So, Luis Merced, brother, it is a absolute honor to have this conversation with you, and I'm excited for it. I've actually been diving into the Digital Jim Pro book, and I'm excited for this interview. So, without further ado, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, thank you for having me. First of all, my name is Luis Merced. I've been a clinical mental health counselor for 10 years this year. Um, I have a clinical background in trauma, parts work connecting with the selves that are inside of you, um, EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and attachment focused EMDR, which is a little bit different. It focuses much more on the attachment theory, which I love and I encompass throughout my clinical work. Also, digital wellness and digital literacy has been something that has been a recent addition to my work. Uh, Talk a little bit more about it later, but it's unavoidable where we are as a culture. Um, but yeah, I was born and raised in Ohio. Uh, and that presented its own difficulties for me. I'm a child of trauma. It's been a pervasive element in my life um, throughout my development and into my young adulthood. Uh, so, uh, the interesting aspect with trauma for me and attachment deficits, not getting the attachment needs met, is I was parentified. I was parentified by my mom, and so essentially there was a role that was not. I wasn't a child. I was much more of that person that um, she would vent to. She would talk about these adult things to when I was so small, and uh, I would say that given a mature gratitude lens, I'm grateful for some of these factors that did happen to bring me into this space to work with clients today to understand some semblances of what they're going through because I've lived a similar experience. I left Ohio when I was 18, 2001, actually, July 2001. So I was in basic training in the field exercise during September 11th. That was a odd experience for myself. So I never saw like the visual imagery like till months later until I went to the actual class school. Um, I'm sorry, uh, AIT is what we call it for those listeners. So where I learned my job, and that was devastating. But there was an interesting thing that happened when I played it back in my mind. Um, I was able to process a lot of the overall feelings and experiences of it, and then seeing those images, they certainly presented a different element. I can't imagine what it was like for civilians seeing it day to day, moment to moment. New York, being in New York at all, or New Jersey at that time, yeah, unfathomable.
Yeah.
So I deployed 4 times after that immediately. 2002, I was in Uzbekistan, then Afghanistan shortly after that. 2003, I was in Kuwait for the invasion of Iraq, and then Iraq shortly after that, and then Kuwait 2 more times before leaving for a 3-year break in service because I got married. Anecdotally, I think it was pretty funny that I left because I thought the military would end my relationship, but she joined the Air Force, and then the relationship ended. So that's definitely a overview. There's much more to that than just the military. But then I rejoined for 6 more years uh, and ended my career in 2012, which I started my master's program and yeah, pursued where I am now.
Okay. Man, you actually have quite an extensive background. And if anybody wants to actually check you out on LinkedIn, we'll have your socials and everything at the end, as well as your website. Um, this podcast is about people that have taken their life's experiences and turned those into ingredients that they use to feed others. And brother, you are absolutely one of those beacons that just radiates that. And it's a beautiful thing. And I'm excited. So thank you for your service, by the way. I did 21 years in the military, and I was already in the military when you went through basic. But that experience of watching those planes hit the towers was transformational, to say the least. And then the service that followed after it with the global war on terrorism, very impactful. So thank you for your service.
You as well. My gosh.
Man, I have some questions. I have a list of questions. You're literally the first guest that I've created a list of questions for, but then again, I don't want to disconnect from the authenticity of the conversation, because you just mentioned a word that's new for me. I had never heard the term parentified, but as you were speaking, I was remembering that as a child, I would likely be parentified as well, because um, my dad was in prison, and my uncles and aunts, they just in and out of prison, in and out of incarceration. But when they would write letters home to my grandmother, who was illiterate, she would have me read them to her. And then she would have me scribe the letters back to them. And
Wow.
this was as early as 8 years old. I've always been a good writer. And so um, I was definitely exposed to a lot of conversations and a lot of hurt and trauma that they shared between mother and child. They were my aunts and uncles and my dad, but I got to experience a lot of that, and this, as well as my mom and others. So that's a new term for me. I'm going to have to study that a little bit. Parentified. I didn't even understand that was something. But uh,
Unfortunately, it's all too common.
what are what are the I guess the implications of that parentification?
Oh, yeah. So that's a great question. The implications of being parentified, essentially, you learn codependency, and you learn how to essentially take other people's needs above your own. And you are not even secondary. Sometimes you're third, fourth, fifth in the expression of needs being met. And you essentially drain yourself to be there for others. And it's very problematic, not only for the relationships you go into, because can contempt and resentment build and build, because here you are giving, but you don't have the voice to say, hey, I need to stop. Hey,
Mm,
I'm doing this for you, but I want to take a pause because I haven't had food, or I haven't had this need met. And then inevitably those relationships end. And I don't mean just intimate relationships, I mean friendships too. And it's not reciprocal. So balance isn't a factor that is common in those experiences. And I would say that's a much more drastic expression of example what I gave. There are a lot of great examples and uh, ways to actually combat that from a great book, Disentangling from Emotionally Immature People by Dr. Lindsay Gibson. Beautifully written. It really encompasses ways to combat and build your sense of self with this new attachment to you. Yeah.
okay, I appreciate that. And in post production, we'll actually put the name of the book and a screenshot of that on the screen so that people can look it up. Just a question out of curiosity: is that in relation to, again, in my mind, I would think that there's a that disproportionate authority that exists, because I can recall when, for instance, my grandmother would have a new letter that arrived, and didn't matter what I was doing, she wanted to read the letter from her child,
Hmm.
and so she would have me come sit down, and in a very subtle way, I wonder if the codependency that you mentioned, and putting others' needs before yours arrives from things like that, where there's a disproportionate authority to that, or am I completely off base with that?
Oh no, that's right in line. You essentially don't really have much of a voice or expression or even allowance to have that. It's the other person, and because of that disproportionate amount of authority, that carries over in terms of a blanket statement for many folks who are parentified, where they see everyone as older, even if they're younger or the same age, peer age. They may be that younger part that shows up like, well, their needs, of course, their needs are more important than mine. Why would I bother with my own needs when here is this person that I want to have a relationship with, and they're not even asking me for it. I just want to do for them, and inevitably problems arise.
Wow. And I appreciate that. This is insightful for me, and you've now given me something else to study when our conversation is over. Let me ask you a question. At what point did you realize that the system that we're living in, whether digitally or psychologically or socially, that it was shaping our identity more than our own consciousness or our own desires were?
Oh, stellar question. So I would say that goes back into my internship when I was working in community mental health, and uh, I would say a disproportionate amount of I would say maybe even close to 95% of individuals coming in trauma. So trauma, going into a smaller clinic, um, same. There's still that element of trauma, that nuance, that bit. Um, and other places where I work, it was a trauma center, sure, trauma clinic, the last clinic that I worked before my private practice, and yeah, we mostly got trauma clients, but um, it does seem like there's an inordinate amount of trauma that's connected. And when we were in 2020, the lockdown,
Mhm.
that lens that I was looking for shifted over to something that really didn't get a lot of attention. It was gaining attention, but not necessarily where we are now. Right now, we have a lot more attention towards digital wellness, digital literacy. But back in 2020, we were essentially just all hyper aroused. And it's interesting how there's a carryover in terms of a Venn diagram regarding what trauma symptoms present, how symptoms present themselves, and how the symptoms of screen overuse. So, like you're thinking of avoidance, like avoiding thoughts or feelings by indulging in some of these experiences, the hyperarousal, trouble sleeping, on edge, the cognitive mood shifts, difficulty feeling some positive feelings, or um, inability to like kind of remember key things, just negative thoughts, blame. Of course, the physical symptoms, right? Sedentary life can present their own physical symptoms, where we may not eat well, we may not rest well, and then our body responds in kind. And the negative beliefs, to dovetail from that, if we're thinking of a complex PTSD lens, we may feel poorer about ourselves. We may feel less desirable. And anyone who's certainly been online in terms of a dating profile, that's it. That's the life. You're going to feel a lot of that
Oh man,
because,
that trap of rejection.
yeah, that's a lesson of rejection and abandonment for sure. Um, because we're not getting our needs met. Like if we're thinking about just Maslow's hierarchy, right? The physiological needs, then safety, then love and belonging, and then self-esteem, and then self-actualization. We're not getting those top three from online discourse, but we're not even getting those three from the content we uh, see or experience. Because as the USC Annenberg Initiative, I think it was early 2000s to 2022. It was a longitudinal study that examined in University of Southern California, to be specific. They examined movies from that whole lens,
Okay.
and diversity was very, very poor in production, on screen, within the writers, and there there goes a question: if diversity is not there present with the writers or producers or directors, how does that make the actual characters diverse? How does that exemplify the relationship of what, you know, this person, whatever ethnic or maybe or identity based experience they belong to, how is this representing the whole? And oftentimes we get a lot more stereotyped imagery. We get a lot more of those factors that don't present the idea, the complexity of human experiences. It presents much more of that monolithian kind of experience. Okay, well, here's a stereotype, and essentially you are at the mercy of um, whiteness. To be clear,
Isn't man, that's almost by design. It feels that way, at least today, looking at the current political climate and the mentality of a good portion of this country. Um, it can feel like the desire is that America becomes a monolithic style society, or a more of a homogenous existence where DEI is like a bad word. It's a no-no. And something you said earlier that I would like to follow up. So I'm a big believer in a statement made by Earl Nightingale. He says that we become what we think about.
mm,
Um, and when I look back through the lens of COVID and how, in many ways, we became more digitally dependent for social interaction because we were isolated, because we were essentially segregated. Um, it's very possible for people that have manipulated the algorithms to feed into certain inadequacies or certain empowerment strategies also,
mm.
uh, where we essentially, I feel like we became more distant than we've ever actually been. But I'm curious how you think about that from that lens of, if we become what we think about and we're constantly dependent on this digital landscape that we have currently, how and what lasting impacts do you think that it has had and will continue to have on us?
Well, neuroscience also, I would say, dovetails from that. We are what we think about, because 40% of all nerve endings, nerve fibers connect to the retina. Almost 50% of the brain is either passive or actively presented with visual processing. We really are what we visually ingest. And that all those figures, uh, the 50%, that's more than all the senses combined. So we really truly are what we visually ingested. And unfortunately, we and this goes further before 2020. I mean, bell hooks talked about it, right? So this goes into a by design, as you've been mentioning, experience algorithmically or production based aspects of essentially keeping the guardrails tight and shaping identity. And that's like eating fast food all the time and and expecting yourself to feel good, or visually ingesting garbage. And this is not necessarily like, I'm not trying to say that tech is bad. I love tech. I love it. I'm a nerd. I video game. I do a lot of things tech based, work remotely. Beautiful. But balance is key, because we're not getting our 8 fundamental needs with tech. We're not getting safety at all. We're not feeling like we belong. It's
Right.
like you're saying, polarizing us. We're not getting that attunement, feeling seen by others, which or emotion or expressions of emotional regulation. We're getting much more of the opposite, where emotional dysregulation is so commonplace now. I
Mhm.
mean, I think if anyone would scroll through any of those short form contents, most are not talking in a calm, natural tone.
No.
It's always loud. It's always pay attention. And that is jarring to our nervous system over time. Not to mention the graphics that come up. So yeah, it's not reassuring and soothing. That expressing delight is an interesting fundamental need, and I it's hard. I'm hard pressed to identify where we can experience that from a comment section, where people really truly connect and cherish other people's expression and try to understand them. There, to be fair, there are certainly like subreddits that do that, but our interaction is generally poor. Um, there might be some guidance and mentoring. I think people do have skills and stuff like with the um, specific skill based niches out there in terms of videos. Good, that's awesome and lovely, but you might not necessarily have that confidence that goes along with that mentoring because it's not one on one. It's parasocial. So video based, it's not necessarily going to stick as much as someone saying, "Come here, let me teach you physically and give you that kinesthetic learning experience where we're side by side." Or um, oh gosh, I forgot the actual term when we're working side by side. Maybe you recall it, but anywho, I'm ADHD, so I'll probably jump around it later in the recording.
It's all good,
Uh,
man. You know,
conflict and oh,
funny
sorry.
enough, brother, I only have one historical reference where a perfect human was ever mentioned. So I don't expect perfection from anybody. And in that regard, I don't feel that any of us are meant to be perfect, which means that we're all perfect as we are. If I can follow up, we're talking about this trauma, and we're talking about generational trauma in a sense that some of these things are being passed forward through it. Man, there's so many different things that we're talking about, first of all. But um, as you were speaking, a quote came to my head from Dr. Wayne Dyer, where he says, "It's never the snake bite that kills you, it's the venom left coursing through your veins."
Mm,
And if we're watching short form videos, consuming all of this digital um, marketing material, which I feel that it is all just designed to steal your attention away. It's the corporatization of your attention. Um, then if we know through epigenetics and other means that trauma can pass through generations, the question is, I know you said you appreciate technology. Do you think that technology is accelerating generational trauma, or do you think it can be used or is being used as a tool for healing it?
mm. Well, I think both can be true and are true at the same time because it depends on how you use it. And so if someone does connect with short form content that is, damaging to the person's identity, perceived sense of self, and they're going into that doom scroll or rage cycling, yeah, that's going to conflate that and expand that generational trauma. But if we go into some content that is positive, not toxic positivity, because that's a different thing, but positive content that inspires, uplifts, and cherishes the complexity of that person or people in general, then yeah, I think it's definitely not binary, but it's so complex that we really want to also flesh out, where are you getting this information, who's benefiting from this by you presenting this, and healthy suspicion is a scientific principle. It's the scientific method. We want to have that healthy suspicion about content because there's, generally speaking, something to gain by these videos. It would be great if there's altruistic, and there are some, but generally speaking, there's, like you mentioned, the commodification of attention, um, or as most people have seen online, it's just an avenue to sell more things. And yeah.
But even that, man, I feel like we're more isolated than we've ever been
Mhm.
as as a species. And I think that the largest opportunity that will exist in the very near future is human connection. People that have an innate ability to connect to other humans, because it feels like the more that I talk with people nowadays, the less amount, the less that they have a lesser capacity for authentic conversation. I was just having lunch with someone yesterday, um, and it's amazing how difficult it is for people just sitting in a restaurant looking around, how difficult it is for people to maintain a conversation without picking up an electronic device, without grabbing their cell phone to look at it. In this lens of back to this generational trauma, this is something that my parents and my grandparents didn't have to deal with. They dealt with something else. I mean, you wrote the book Digital Jim Crow, and I'm excited to get into that. Um, but within this lens of this trauma, especially from all the digital consumption that we have, who's responsible, do you think, for breaking the patterns that existed even before we were born, as you're talking about passing things through generations? And then who's responsible today for the success of the next generations to come?
Mhm. We all, the individual is responsible. That we all have choice here to break patterns, to break cycles, and that choice is not easy because going to extensive um, trauma resolution therapy or connecting with your sense of self or reparenting your own needs, those are all immensely difficult. You're talking about dipping your toe into pools that you've grown or learned to avoid. And if that individual is able to do that work, hard work as it is, we have the option and potential to limit what we spread into future generations if you choose to have children or community. And I say limit because, as you mentioned, there's only one historical individual who is perfect, and no parent is perfect. There's going to be something else that shows up. So limiting is key, but it starts with us, that individual, um, and it starts with a connection, as you're mentioning, because that loneliness epidemic that people keep talking about with men, that's not just men, that's everybody, and whether it's work related or community related. As you're mentioning, when our attention is drawn into the singularity of screens, it's or other things, um, it shifts our attention towards connecting and understanding what a community member, who that person is, and it takes away an option for building community because we can't do anything by ourselves. We need community, and if we're alone and isolated, that that's a big detriment to well-being generally, because you can do all the resolution care, trauma resolution therapy, or other modalities, and not have friends, and that's then becomes a overwhelming umbrella that just keeps hanging over you, a cloud that keeps hanging over you, and that's extensive trauma, rejection, abandonment, like we were talking about before. So yeah.
Brother, I've seen and talked with so many people that have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and literally millions of followers,
Mm.
and yet they feel like they have no friends. I recall being in Beverly Hills, and I was invited to this famous person's mansion, and it's the type of mansion where they don't let you park your own car. You have to give it to the valet. And I remember
Huh.
as I was walking in, just like sticking my hands in my pocket because I didn't want to accidentally smudge one of the cars because I know I couldn't afford to probably wipe off my fingerprint off this car. But as I got in there and I'm talking to the homeowner, to this famous person who invited me. Eventually, we ended up on a balcony, and he's explaining to me. Now, mind you, his house is full of celebrities. But we're on a balcony, and he's explaining to me how many times he's thought about jumping off that balcony
Mhm.
because he has all of these followers. He has all these people that are around him for his resources, but he doesn't feel like he has any friends. And it was sad because it was the first face to face conversation that we were having, but he felt more connected to share that with me than he would to walk back into his house that was full of all of these other people. And and it just becomes this thing. If you see this guy on social media, you would swear that he must be like swimming in friends, right? Because that's the perception that is created. And then back to yesterday at lunch, one of the waitresses was gorgeous, just gorgeous. And I asked her a question because the person I was having lunch with, I had just shared with him that one of my personal beliefs is you don't have to die to go to hell. Hell is the inability to look in the mirror and love yourself. So, as it relates back to what you're saying with identity, and I explained to him that I haven't met a person for whom the public perception of who they are matches who they see themselves as in the mirror. And he had remarked on the beauty of this young lady. And so when the waitress came back, I asked her a simple question: Have you ever done modeling? And she initially smiled, and then it was like a switch. I don't do that anymore. That no, 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 I'm not pretty. I'm not. It's just not. And brother, she just shrank within herself.
Mm.
And so, as you talk about this digital consumption, comparing yourself to IG models or these visions of perfection, some of which are just AI generated, most of which involve makeup or cosmetic surgery or different things like this. Like, is there a solution for that so that people, how do we get back to this place where we can appreciate the beauty of who we actually are? And I'm asking you that because you're an expert in this.
Mm. How do we get back? Well, there are many different ways. They're all going to be challenging, and those are really poignant stories about these folks who are just struggling with identity, sense of self, amidst what we identify as like the ideal. And I think resources don't make bring about happiness. Community does. Contentment is more a better statement than happiness, but that's really what we should be striving for is contentment. But contentment means not only a relationship with ourselves, our relationship with having those secure positive attachments that from others, but also the idea of purpose and meaning. We need purpose and meaning in our life, and whatever that looks like. So could be work, could be working at a career you love, but also it could be a hobby. People can derive purpose and meaning even if they don't like their work. But getting away from the unbalanced experience with screens, we need tech to do that, because that kind of goes back to the question about who's responsible for this. Unfortunately, the tech companies and oligarchies have certainly presented it to us. Now, we have to do it. We have to choose. That's We're going to continue to get more and more of this kind of digital oppression. So we need tech to cut the tide. So, like, if it's your phone, Apple has Opal and Jomo that you can download. Those are two different apps that you can block the problematic apps, but you need to identify what's your problematic app. Fortunately, they already identify it because screen time shows you which apps that you actually use often. Um, but think of it in terms of problematic. Is it really benefiting you? Is this a vegetable to my life? Is this fulfilling? Is this giving me that relationship like we're talking about with those fundamental needs? Is it giving me attunement? Is this giving me reassurance and soothing? Is it giving me express delight? Odds are no. Most tech things aren't. So identify which ones you're using mostly, then use those apps to block out, but also make sure your phone isn't a brick for safety purposes. You still need access to your banking, GPS, text, call for safety. Please don't sit on your hands on that. But a simple method too, in addition to this, if you're still thinking about or flirting with the idea of what digital wellness looks like, change your phone or screens to grayscale. That prevents the blue light
Mm.
emitted from them. It bores the brain so much that you just don't want to look at the screen. And it's so lovely. It's a simple life hack. Um, I generally have my cell phone on grayscale for that same reason. And being color blind or color deficient, as I like to say, I can still see colors, it's just variations of colors that are issue. Um, when I did that first for like a week, everything lit up. Everything was more brilliant, and this was on a rainy, gray day, so everything was just more lovely to
Yeah.
experience. Um, but yeah, there are a lot of different ways to identify how to get away from it, but there's always going to be a consequence, and we want to look at what how to set yourself up for success. So that means building skills in being able to manage and tolerate your own feelings, because when you are away from screens, you really have your brain. And if you don't have a relationship with just being with your brain, it can feel so overwhelming and even threatening to make you feel that you need to dig in deeper into the actual compulsory aspect. And this is an addiction. We want to identify it as such. Most people are addicted to their phones or other screens.
Right.
Okay. And not, that's not a shameful aspect. I'm not presenting it as shame. Most of us are. It just is because the algorithms are set up that way to keep us engaged. There's no it's not a surprise that the notifications are usually red, because we associate red with stop, pay attention right now. And tech companies know that. So work on building the skill of just being with your brain. So whether that's meditation or um, reparenting your unmet needs, internal family systems is a great way to do so. There's so many different apps out there, mostly meditation based, that you can actually access some guided meditations about any of those. Self compassion meditation is lovely. Uh, and loving kindness meditation. I do specifically recommend those. But additionally, because the inaccessibility of mental health care, you may need to look at the idea of talking to at least someone in some capacity, and it could be a friend. And ideally, it's a friend that really understands and is curious about you, um, and is able to learn, like, okay, you're bringing about a problem I don't see as a problem, but I want to learn why it's a problem for you. That's a good interaction there. They're able to learn and shift that understanding versus
You know,
codependent.
interestingly, in alignment with what you're saying here, it reminds me, and I guess there's probably many people that have used this statement, but you can't escape from a prison that you don't know that you're in. And what I hear from you is an undercurrent of we are addicted. Many people don't know that they're addicted to these screens, these various screens. And I'm just thinking of myself sitting here where I have televisions, I have a laptop, I have a desktop, I have two cell phones, one for business, one for personal, and it's just screens, screen, screen, screen. Um, and as I think about that and think about what you're saying about connecting with a friend, I know people that literally would rather have a conversation with a chat GPT
Hmm.
than talk to a professional. And in that, it also feels like a form of a prison because chat GPT can be manipulated and is, in my opinion, a manipulative platform in and of itself because it reassures you or validates kind of a thought process that you're already in alignment with. Um, so if I can, I guess the question relates back to your book because with those facts in mind or those statements in mind, you're talking about digital Jim Crow, which to me is about having systems in place to suppress a people. Now, it was specifically for Black and Brown people in the United States, but I'm wondering in this era of this digital landscape, when you say Jim Crow, are you talking about intentional systems of exclusion or unconscious systems that society refuses to confront? I
Mm.
guess would be my
Well,
question.
I love that question, and I love how you brought AI into the mix too. I'll start with the question itself, and digital Jim Crow is and has been for quite some time focused on Black and Brown marginalized bodies, and that is the unfortunate truth about this experience. And the book wasn't even going to be called Digital Jim Crow. I was going to call it The Visual Diet. But the more and more research that came out, the more and more I was pulled into this. And it's not, it is by design um, oppressive, damaging. Specifically to Black and Brown bodies, whether it's the idea of censoring Black women's voices on whenever we talk about racism, the uh, sexist, racist expression in gaming culture. That's clear and evident, especially if we're talking about those online communities. FIFA, unfortunately, is a big bilayer of that. But yeah, this is all systems of oppression that continue to perpetuate the idea of otherness and less than, and it, it creates more harm. Harm for identity, harm for sense of self, but also harm in the ways that we may not necessarily look at, because professionals are reading or watching these shows and seeing this distorted element of how a culture might be represented, and then they might be servicing the same culture in the same understanding in terms of myopia. Like, okay, this is all you are, and it's great that they are willing to work with these folks for one, um, but it's feeding the idea that we are just one thing, and that's not okay in the realm of where we are globally, because just perpetuates more harm. It perpetuates more harm not only in the understanding of what common enemy identity politics are. Identity politics are great, uh, uh, but it's with the idea that my brother and me against my cousin, my brother and my cousin against my dad. That's common enemy identity politics, where we just shift away from uh, what makes us in terms of the whole idea of identity, and we segment this one piece. This is me, and if you're not with me, you're against me, and that's problematic in its own right. But all these are designed this way. I mean, most programmers are white, so all these algorithms, if I present a few studies, especially when we're talking about like Black women, or just generally women, how they're preyed upon in terms of what they watch and what they see, and how the algorithm pushes like self harm or body image factors or social comparison dynamics. But we're also seeing that with boys. Social comparison is a common element in body dysmorphia, and we're seeing more boys and young men experiencing that. My body's not good enough. I'm not good enough, and um, that's unfortunately a disproportionate attack upon Black and brown bodies, to be specific.
I
Um,
I relate to what you're saying, and all of this ties back together because I'm thinking about during COVID how um, let's just take one of them. Let's just take George Floyd.
mhm,
For a black man or a brown man to look at the media And I mean, George Floyd was just one. There was so many. And you're constantly looking at this on TV or YouTube or whatever, the treatment of the black body still, so many years after slavery ended, there begins to be this wearing down of the self-image and this ability, this thought that you can protect yourself and you can protect your family. I'm a father. I have 4 kiddos. I have a young son, and there is, at a subconscious level, this worry of, can I protect my son? You know, and that's probably from consuming so much of this. And if I were in charge of these algorithms and being able to reshape the world into my image, I can understand as a white male why I would want that mindset or that altering of your paradigm of the black man, black male figure to be that way. But I can also understand what you're talking about when it comes to the images, the self-image of black women. And it's not just black and brown people. I want to be clear with that, because surely I have a real life example where I had this young man who was plowing my snow, and he did great job, man. But he unfortunately just very prominent Hispanic features. And he is a Hispanic male, has a strong, very strong accent. And when all of this stuff happened in Minnesota and everything, he just quit. And he started isolating himself. He gave up on his business and everything because he didn't want the harassment from the community. And I think that's a part of what I'm saying here. So in alignment with that, the technology evolves much faster than human wisdom or our ability to even comprehend what is happening to us, right? And I use this analogy where it feels like humans are running and have been running a marathon. And there are some people that have been running for a while, and so they're nearing the finish line. They're at mile 20 or mile 25. There are other people that are just tying their shoes. It feels like while we're running the marathon, though, we've created technology that is a high-speed train, and there's just no flipping way we can keep up with it. So what worries you about the gap between the technology evolving as fast as it is and our ability to stay wise to it or stay connected to it or understand even what's happening within us and in our brains?
Yeah, what worries me is, as we were talking about at the very beginning, the continued polarization of our worlds, our reality. And if we continue to, bringing AI into the mix, as we're continuing to essentially give AI companies carte blanche in terms of their scaling. I think the Big Beautiful Bill doesn't have any stipulations on AI for 10 years. We're in a realm of deepfake technology that is becoming almost indistinguishable to what reality is. So what is reality when we have all this content that is expressing what may seem innocuous, but is harmful to a specific culture, a specific individual in terms of identity? Is this real? Is this fake? What do we make of this? And if we add the idea that that starting last year up until 2030, yes, experts are identifying that AI will have 99% of control on the internet. So reality would be subjective. And in a subjective reality, there's always something to help prove or disprove someone's reality, then leading to confirmation bias, which it then leads individuals to dig deeper into their beliefs. So if I believe that you are hurting me, and online is telling me that you're hurting me, I don't know if that's AI or not, but that's confirming my bias that you are hurting me, and you're my enemy now. And that means more and more segmented and polarize individuals, which then leads to potential civil wars, just because reality is now fake, and we don't know that this. We don't know. We don't have the skills to talk to that neighbor or that community member and have conflict and repair, because now we're just overwhelmed, and then we're reactionary. So essentially becoming the tool of our own destruction. And I don't mean that in a doom and gloom way. I think we can get to a point in time, maybe 2030, when we're realizing, oh, the AI is not serving us anymore. We're literally having too many conflicts, and maybe we need to reorient our life. I think that could be a good tipping point to humanity. There's a lot of potential there, but as we are now, we're feeding more and more into it. And what is it? Every time you use like ChatGPT, it's a water bottle. That's a lot of clear consequence on marginalized communities who are then paying the power bills for those server farms that are feeding into AI.
Right.
The cost just goes into the community, us. So whether it's water insecurity or energy insecurity, heat and cool AC insecurity, because we can't afford it, then leading to more and more of the economy, the wage gap that is pervasive now. So there's a lot of worries and concerns, but I do see potentially hope, because more and more attention is coming up, and people can collectively make a choice and a change. And it starts with us, going back to what you were mentioning before. It starts with us now.
Man, I agree with you that it starts with us now. It's just trying to understand how, like, what is the next thing? And AI for me is the most excitingly terrifying technological advance, just
Mhm.
period. And when I look at the various AIs that exist, especially within the realm of large language models that are common access, depending on which one you use, depends on the output that you receive. And you can have something like a grok that refers to itself as Meta Hitler. And if you're unaware of when it happened, then you may just start using that platform because your friend said it's a good platform or something like that, and you don't understand the context underneath it and how it is literally designed to reshape your identity through the media that it's pushing out to you or the narrative that it's feeding to you. And I have a son. I have 4 kids, and my youngest is my 8-year-old son. And it worries me about his future and what he's being shaped by. And you mentioned conversations in games and things like this. And man, just looking at the comments sometimes that he gets from people on Roblox, these games where you have the ability to chat or people can send you a message, and how that sinks into his head. Let me ask you, I guess, I know I have my fears for my son. 50 years from now, he'll be 58 years old. And let's say his grandchild is reading your work, because I do think that your work is something that can last and stand the test of time, the way that a Napoleon Hill was able to publish Think and Grow Rich. I think you're that powerful, brother, with some of the insight that you have.
Thank you.
Especially as it relates to you talking about digital oppression and a digital diet or a digital detox. So in 50 years from now, when his grandson is reading your work, what do you hope that they understand about our world today? Do you think they'll look at it as a tipping point, or what do you think will be?
Well, that's really my hope, that they're seeing where they potentially went, and that's it was much more of a positive realm, because there's no limit to the things that we're saying. That is, there's nothing new in my book. I think my book is a compilation of a lot of different meta-analyses that other individuals have used, like Dr. Marquita Gamage's Black Media Racism, or like I was mentioning, Bell Hooks. There's all these factors have been ongoing. Um, so yeah, I think ideally, individual reading it from 50 years from now would see it as digital literacy for even their present. What they can do to understand that the digital realm is um, fraught with untruths, and we may need to scrutinize it a little bit more using the scientific method, but also have a balance. I'm a big proponent of balance, and my hopes for people now till then is starting to plant the seed of what balance looks like for the digital world. Because some people like us, it's unavoidable. We work remotely, and that's okay. But it's the idea of shifting into that us time, where we might be able to choose something that might be a little bit more analog outside of the digital realm, or something that's digital. We just can't have it all digital. That will affect our sleep and mood, and then our relationships and our identity. So balance is key. Even what we watch, the content of what we watch. So if we're watching something that is like, for example, white centric, we may need to watch something that is much more diverse in making us have that balance. Same with like watching horror. We may need to watch something that is a little bit more positive or slice of life, that can balance what our arousal is. It's all about balance here, and that's the idea. We can't just end our relationship with tech, nor do I want to, or do most people. And I do not advocate that at all. I think we just need more balance, and balance is the best thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With this, I wonder how many people still believe that, technology doesn't have an impact on their life today. For instance, the seeming desensitization to murders, to death related to, if you look at what's happening in the world compared to movies like the Avengers, you're talking about the content that we're consuming and the way that it reshapes our brains. I hear some people talking, and it's just, I heard someone refer to Palestinians as cockroaches the other day, and it was just like, no, hell no. So I feel, brother, that both you and I are trying to help people wake up to these influences, these systems that are reshaping their lives and reshaping their paradigms. But I'm not sure that awareness is enough, man. I'm just not. What do you think of that? Is awareness enough?
No, and definitely not. I think awareness is not enough in a lot of different ways, but education is. Education can be getting us there. So the people who are resistant, that's fine. I think if they're in that pre-contemplation phase of stages of that trans-theoretical stage of change, okay, that's where you are. And if you choose, here's some information that might potentially augment it. We can only change us, and data is a good represented nature of, hey, this isn't me just thinking about this, and this is widely researched. I just want to like show people this is the book, but I don't want to scare you. That's how thick the book is. It's just well researched,
Yeah.
and you can jump around as needed, but don't make it feel like it's a book report or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, data is it can help a lot of folks, even if it's just planting the seed. I would say, like with your children, and other people who are parents, there are books out there that are specific to digital literacy, and that's something that we're missing not only in our education systems, which I doubt that would be immersed in that, but like books like How to Raise a Screen Smart Child, by Juliana Minor. Don't quote me on the name, but those are Those are great books to just plant seeds. And really, we may need to plant seeds right now, because it's hard to say, hey, your screen is destroying your life. Most people would just be resistant about it. Like, okay, hey, maybe you might want more of a balance. A softer approach is necessary for a lot of folks, because it's going to take some time before they realize that, oh yeah, I wasn't really being empathetic about these people, or that person, and
Okay.
I don't know myself without this.
I love that you keep coming back to balance. And I love how you're able to articulate or to take very complex questions that have multiple layers and various facets and break it down into something that's manageable. Um, Let me ask you this final question as it relates to the Sauce of Life podcast interview, which is, um, what's what's one thing that people believe about whether it's technology or identity or trauma that you think is completely wrong?
Hmm. Oh, I think identity. I want to choose that one because I think it encompasses so much of the other factors. Um, Identity isn't cemented. We continue to shift our identity from time to time, and our identity can be certainly manipulated, like it is with screens. We used to think that people knew who they were mostly around their young adulthood up until 25, where our brain is fully developed. I don't see that. I don't see that with my clients who are much older. I don't see that with my clients who are closer to that age. I see there's a lot more of a question aspect, um, and you know well, who I am in that stage was definitely a different person from a different universe. Someone I may not necessarily like at this point in time in my life. And that's okay. That's just an element of who we are. We're carrying over our identity, but it always can change. And I don't mean like core elements of our identity, like, sexuality, or, well, actually, I guess it could, because when they're exploring a little bit more, that it might shift. But the core aspects that are already accepted as a part of you, and or gender identity. But it isn't a static, or yeah, it isn't a static experience. It's a complex, ever changing symphony of us, and trauma is connected to that as well, because the trauma Luis is different from the present Luis, um, because of the work that I've done for myself. And
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. That's beautiful, man. You are, like I said, brother, as far as the sauce of life, a person that's been able to take their life's experiences and turn those into ingredients that they use to feed others. I think that you are killing it. You're doing great.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely amazing. Um, so, as a final question for you, because I'm again respecting your time, Luis, if this were the only time that you and I spoke, or the only time that someone from our audience got to hear you speak, what is it that you would want us to walk away with?
Yeah, I think you have choice, and it's important to remind yourself that you have a choice to do whatever you think is best for yourself. If we choose to do nothing, that's a choice. If we choose to sit on something and make it, and to think a little bit more about it, to stew on it, okay, that's still a good choice too. There's there's nothing that you need to essentially place shame about in terms of these choices that you're making, especially when it relates to your digital wellness and digital literacy, or relationship with trauma, or relationship to receive care. Just the idea of thinking about it is a great step, and sitting with it is a fantastic step. So give yourself just some acknowledgement that this is a part of your journey. If you choose to in the future, okay, great. If you don't, that's fine too. just a spice of your own life.
Beautiful, brother. I appreciate your time. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so my website is Mercy Trauma Recovery. My book's available in most retailers. Soon to be actually Audible. I'm waiting for them to actually approve it for, and I do have a couple of audiobook aspects for like iTunes and Google.
Yes,
Um,
yes, on iTunes.
yeah, so those.
And
I think
socials?
I am on Instagram, but I barely use it because
Okay.
obviously this is this is my relationship with tech. But I do have an Instagram, Mercy Trauma Recovery, at Mercy Trauma Recovery, and
All right.
LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn too.
Okay. So we will put all of your socials on the screen. Luis Merced, brother, I appreciate this conversation. This has been great. And I think that there are many people that will gain from this. And also, I highly encourage people to read your book. It is a thick book. It is a more of an academic read in some places, but the knowledge that's contained within it is transformational if you can open your mind to it. So I appreciate you and I appreciate what you've done.
I appreciate all the time that you gave me, and I designed the book to jump around. So again, don't let the thickness deter you. Feel free to jump around.
I can vouch for that. It is a book that you can pick and choose which chapters you want to read. So I think you did a great job there. And as one author to another, I think you did a fantastic job with the way that you wrote this book.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.